Hi everyone, welcome to another Intro to HTML video. In this video, I'm going to talk about Google's Inspector. It used to be called the Element Inspector, now it's just called the Inspector. The Inspector allows us to look at the markup of a web page in the browser. It'll also allow us to inspect things like scripts. It'll allow us to inspect how the markup is using white space and the box model. There are a lot of really cool features to this. In order to do this, we're going to need a web page that we'll create so that we can easily inspect it. So I've got basically this is your basic HTML skeleton with the doc type, the HTML tag, the head, the char set, your title. I've got a style sheet with paragraph selected and a background color, margin, and padding set. Maybe get that in yours. And then I've got the body that has 3 paragraphs in it. I'm going to give you a second to get that set. You might pause so that you can get your web page put together so that you can get on the same page with me. All right, welcome back. We're going to look at this in the browser. So I've got my paragraph selected, background color set to silver, margin set to 5%, padding set to 2%, and I've got 3 paragraphs inside of the body. Here's what it looks like in the browser. I've got my 3 paragraphs with their padding and their margins, silver backgrounds. Let's look at the inspector. If I right-click and choose Inspect, Control-Shift-I is also the keyboard shortcut. Inspect is going to bring up this panel down here on the bottom. We'll still see the browser in this window up top. We'll get this panel down on the bottom with all sorts of things from elements to console, sources, network, timeline, profiles, application security, audits. The only one we're going to focus on right now is elements. The elements tab is going to allow us to look at the HTML markup and see what elements we have, and also it'll allow us to look at the styles. Over here is where you get the HTML. This is the HTML that I wrote. See inside the body, I've got my 3 paragraphs. If I expand the paragraph, you can see the content that's there. Okay? In the head, if I expand that, I can see my style sheet. I'll expand that, and you can see that I've selected paragraph, and I've set the background color to silver, margin 5%, padding to 2%. Very cool. So this allows us to look at the markup on our pages that we've made. You might ask, well, why is that important? I can always just go right over to Notepad++, and I can see my markup right over here. I'm just looking at the same thing, just in a different context. Well, yeah, but what if we want to look at how another page was built? Let's go to A List Apart. A List Apart is a website that we've looked at before, and it is a website about best practice in web design. And you can see that it's much more complex. It's got a whole bunch of stuff up here, some conditional comments. We've got our head right here. We've got a bunch of links to all kinds of stuff. We've got our body right here. In the body, we've got a header. In the header, we've got an H1. We've got a link inside of that H1. Down below that, we've got a nav, and the nav has a UL. It's got a bunch of LIs. And you notice when I'm hovering over each of these individual elements here in the markup, look at what happens in the display. When I hover over this first LI, you'll notice that it will highlight that thing. When I hover over the UL, it'll highlight that thing. When I hover over the nav, it'll highlight that thing. When I hover over the H1, it highlights that. Hover over the body, it highlights that. So this is going to show us in the markup what things correspond with what's happening in the browser. So it gives us an immediate visual connection between the markup and what's happening in the browser. Really, really cool. Especially if you want to learn from better designers than you. You can look at websites like A List Apart or like Star Tribune or something like that and inspect all the elements. See how they put their web pages together and learn from those things. So this is how we inspect the markup. How do we inspect the CSS? I want to look at the CSS in just this LI here. I'm going to click on it and then go over to this box right here. This box is my styles box. It's going to tell us all of the styles for that item. And this is a complex website. Like I said, you can see there are a lot of styles set for just that. Let's go over to our web page because it's very simple. I'm going to click on the paragraph. And when I hover over this, you're going to see the blue box that highlights the text, the green box around it, and the pinkish tan box around that. Each of those different colored boxes indicates something different. Blue indicates the content box. Green indicates the padding, how much padding there is. The pinkish tan indicates how much margin there is. Okay, so when I hover over something, you can see that they get that kind of highlighting. You can see there's a little bit of a margin around the body. There's a big margin around the paragraph and a little bit of padding around the paragraph. When I click on this off to the right, we can see our styles. Right here are the styles that I have written. Background color silver, margin 5%, padding 2%. You can see there's a little arrow here. I can click on that and it'll show you what the specific margins are for top, right, bottom, and left. I've got the padding, it does the same. So this will show us what's actually being applied in the web page. Let's say we make a mistake. I'm going to accidentally do this. Whoops, I forgot that stuff. I'm going to save it, refresh it, come over to this paragraph, and I'm going to notice background color is set to silver, and then it says margin padding 2% and it's crossed out. This says invalid property value. Invalid property value means it recognizes there's a value that doesn't work. 5% padding, 2% is being considered as the whole value. This is considered as a value. That thing there is not a value for margin. The semicolon ends an entire statement. Okay? So what it was doing is it was considering this whole thing here as the value because there is no colon in there. So I'm going to put the semicolon back in there, save it, and let's see if it works. Well, it doesn't. It doesn't quite work yet because we still have a problem. I look over at the problem here, hover over it, invalid property value. So margin, well, I can put 5 there. Oh, that's right. I need a percent. I need to have some sort of unit over here. Percent, pixels, ems, whatever. I need to put something there. So this is going to tell me when something is and isn't working. So I'm going to put my percent back, and now it'll work properly. Look back over here, and I've got my 5% and 2%. Very cool. Now, let's take a look at computed. Computed is going to give us a little box model diagram. It'll show us how much margin we have, how much padding we have, and how big the content is. So that's your element inspector. This is going to help you poke through your web pages and make sure that you know that when things aren't working, you can find ways to fix them. I'm going to be using this throughout the rest of the videos. So I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you learned a little bit from it. Thanks for watching.